And I know your hands are getting sore, but this is Dominic. Please welcome Dominic to the stage.
Hello. I'm going to talk about survival from a very different angle to, I think, the other speakers here today. It's mostly going to be me telling the story of a piece of equipment that we have been working on, restoring, which is where the crumbling edge comes in, because it's a piece of very old equipment rather than a piece on the cutting edge. We're at the other end. And the bottom part of that is just me being deliberately melodramatic and doesn't really... it's really not that bad. Survival. Wow, my presenter notes are incredibly small. That's going to make this really interesting. Okay. It's probably involved me bending down to actually read them. Why have they come out that small? So I'm talking about the literal survival of technology and knowledge as things progress at one end, things are being lost. At the other end, where we are, the things are breaking, but not just things are breaking, how they were made, why they were made, how to fix them, all of that is being lost. What we do as a business is restoring old music equipment. We think that equipment has a value in the present, so we've become quite interested in what happens with this loss of skills and how you preserve them. And that's another part of survival. It's what a business can do when it's doing more than survive. So you are doing survival, if you like, can mean just getting by, just keeping your head above water. And actually what we're trying to do is do more than survive and have enough headroom to pursue understanding some of these things that are being lost and try and preserve it. So this is a slide with a spelling mistake. It should be a single N in Limani. So this is Urphaga limani, a Colombian tree frog, Lehman's poison frog. It's a survivor. It is found in maybe 10 square kilometers of rainforest, spread over a few isolated populations. It's hugely under threat. It typifies many people's idea, or one idea of survival, and something that's trying to survive and something that's at the mercy of its environment. It doesn't feature any further in this story. This is a CompuSound frog. You see the connection, which is a music, an effect pedal, effectively, made in 1975, and it is a piece of technology. They only ever made 100 of them. No one knows how many there are left. We know the location of 4 because 3 are in our office and 1 we sold to a nice musician from Northern Ireland. And of the 3 that we have, only 1 works. Obviously the one we sold works as well, the other 2 don't. And it's the story of this that I'm going to come back to. Why did I put that there? Well, yeah, why? So why go through the pain? Why bother try saving it? Because it's unique, because it represents things like this piece of equipment was on, at the time, it was on the cutting edge. So why did they make it? How did they make it? What solutions did they find to a problem that they couldn't have found previously, and which soon were able to be solved a lot more easily? And what you have is something that it's unique, and it's a bit almost like a time capsule. And also we find with this old equipment that it has a value in the present day. People making music now, people using the equipment now, use it in ways the designers didn't intend, and it can change their creative process, and I will come back to that as well. This is James. James will kill me because I didn't realize this screen was going to be this big, and that is James. He's important because I am not a tech. I do not repair the equipment. James did all the technical stuff, and the extraordinary achievements are down to him. I'm standing on his shoulders, although I'm going to get to put the gin down first. And he is another aspect of survival within this, because when he did the work for us, he was a freelance tech, essentially, mostly just surviving, just keeping his business above water and his rent paid. And it was only because we were able to come to him and say, we will pay you to do this thing that it's not going to produce a commercial outcome. It's not going to produce something we can sell. I mean, we have after about a year's work, produced one we could sell. We'll never get back what we've invested in it directly, although by, my job in the business is social media, hopefully by creating content and lots of stuff to talk about, and by putting up all the process that we've done online, that brings us other benefits. So that's James. What do I want to say about James? I suppose the only thing I want to say is he's undoubtedly one of the best people in the world at what he does, and that's important because, anyway, you'll find out when I tell the story. So this is us. We're Soundgas. We sell supersonic gear, which is rare music equipment and unusual music equipment, mostly old, some new things. If you want to find us online, that is us. We're very active on social media. What is vintage music equipment? Here is, hopefully. Does it work? Yeah, a very jerky scroll through our Instagram feed this morning, but I thought that was quite useful because actually that is essentially us. That's the office, there's the amps, synthesizers, effects, all sorts of weird things, 1950s, 1980s. If it makes a strange noise, generally we like it, especially if it's unusual or rare. And then, that's the same slide again, that's not helpful. Some more vintage gear, that's a different way of showing the sort of things we do. Just trying to give you a bit of context here for, I guess, why would we bother with this painful process that we went through. That is Tony. Tony set up the company. He set it up quite a few years ago now. It's an eBay business that got out of hand, essentially. He had a studio. He was buying equipment for a studio. He was selling equipment. He started making money, and all of a sudden he needed help, so I got involved. That's essentially the short story of Soundgas. We are building a studio in which the sort of next evolution of the business to go beyond selling the equipment is that we will be getting people to have access to the equipment remotely via a variety of means. And so that's the next stage of what we're doing. That's a synthesizer. It's called a Wasp. I put this in, I'm trying to give a bit of context for why this old equipment. So Dave Stewart from Eurythmics, his first synthesizer that he bought, is used on the first Eurythmics album, also used by Roots Maneuver in 2012 on his album. So this stuff just because it was made a long time ago doesn't mean you're not hearing it today. A lot of vintage gear. That is Win Butler from Arcade Fire's studio. The last album was made entirely on analog gear, apart from the editing on a computer. That yellow circle at the top, we sold them that. That's just me name-dropping that we've supplied gear to Arcade Fire. In fact, that's the thing we sold them. That's not the exact one, but it's a Versi bass synth, which is built from a kit, German bass synth built from a kit. Another weird piece of kit, Tony Visconti got the job working on the Low album with Bowie and Eno on the basis of this, because he rang them up and told them, will this work?
If I said what it does, I would say that it fucks with the fabric of time.
Was it going to do that again? Go on, Tony, do it again. No. Anyway.
If I said what it does, I would say that it fucks with the fabric of time.
He literally said that you've got Bowie on the phone in one part of Bowie's house, Eno on the extension, and that's what he said, and Bowie's like, great, you're in. More vintage gear. I'm going to skip through these quite quickly because I'm running out of time and haven't actually got to the story yet. Vintage gear is now very valuable. The thing at the top, Tony bought his first one for about 70 quid. They now change hands for more than £1,000. It's a reverb unit. Lee Scratch Perry used them in his dub studio. There's Lee Scratch Perry finding out how much they're worth now. The thing in the middle is a Space Echo, made in the 80s, very relevant now. We supplied 6 to the BBC Proms for a piece of music, a premiere of a piece of music for 2 orchestras, effects, and turntables. That piece of music was actually written in 1948 by Daphne Oram, sort of a weird collision of old and modern there. Anyway. The Frog. So you don't have to read all of that. I'm just going to pick a few bits out by squinting at this. So it contains microprocessor technology. It's a guitar synthesizer, so it can be thought of as a whole load of effects all in one box. It guarantees a virtual waterfall of individually cascading harmonics. and you're also invited to kiss a frog. Is it digital? Well, Dick Norse, who designed it, said, it was a digital filtering device, and by digital, we meant you used your fingers to push the buttons. We took some license with that term, as well as with the statement that it used microprocessor technology. So it was very much the AI of its day, in that you just stuck it on. Hopefully now you will hear what it sounds like. Hopefully it's going to make a noise. So it's a little synth, some echoes, but the thing that's making everything wobble around, the sort of watery, all of that is that, and it's a remarkable thing. It has one claim to fame. Every piece of vintage gear should have one claim to fame. The claim to fame of this vintage gear is that it was used on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack on the Wurlitzer keyboard. So I just put this slide in a few times because I just thought that was funny. So I'm going to have to squint now, so I do apologize. Why? So I'm just going to jump through a few points about why we do this. We like the noises they make. Old equipment has a tactile, kinetic experience with interacting with it. That's really key. If you make music on a computer versus if you play it on a piano, the music can both be good, but it will be different. A lot of it's inherently unpredictable, that thing in particular, and a lot of what we do is about the misuse of it, about taking it and going, well, how else can we use it? Let's forget how they wanted to use it. Let's use it our way. So a reminder that the next bit is all down to James. I asked him how the thing worked. That's what he drew me. If anyone wants that explaining, I can do that afterwards. Although what I say may not be entirely accurate or true. So there we are. We got the frogs out. We got them on the bench. We opened them up. We had one working frog. We are on the crumbling edge. The one working frog, the prom chips, could degrade at any time, in which case we will have about 6,000 quid's worth of doorstops. So we've got to read those chips, and then we've got to get the other frogs working by putting the chips in and then finding out what other faults there are, all the time while not destroying them. So it was a painstaking process. There we are looking at them. So what you can see here, and also here, and also here, is, look, when they made it, they scratched the identification numbers off the chips. This was very common with this sort of equipment, so that other designers couldn't copy their designs. That's great until you want to try and fix it. So I'm now compressing months of work, several days of work spread over several months, because we couldn't afford to pay James to do it all in one go, and he's very busy. But by some painstaking detective work of comparing all the chips, we worked out what the serial number was. We discovered that they were ex-military tech, had not been used in anything else, and we could not find them. So James was then able to work out that we could essentially find another chip and trick the frog into thinking that it was the chip that it thought it was supposed to have in it. And this is my Steve Jobs moment. So I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, the future, the Toshiba Tecra 720 CDT. I do not know the spec of this. I do know it's about 30 years old, and it's packing some Windows 95 there. So we've got a piece of technology that could fail at any time, which we're trying to reverse engineer to fix the other crumbling technology using another piece of crumbling technology. You need this because the chip reader won't work with anything more modern. So we read the chip. That's what you get. I know that that's going to play well with some people in this room. More than 12 months later, essentially, from the start of this process, we put the new chips in, and what you can see here is you can sort of see some of James's workaround where he's literally had to rewire these prom chips. I can't tell you how difficult this was. I'm making it sound incredibly short, incredibly easy. He was the only person that we knew who would even take this on. And as far as we're concerned, he's probably the only person that could ever have succeeded in doing it. But it worked. So there we are, dancing around the office. So why bother? Why bother? What is the point of this technology? Well, or of any of these endeavors, and as far as we're concerned, it's about trying to do more than survive. It's about trying to have time in the business to do something that is interesting and has a value beyond an immediate return on investment. And that's partly about us trying to find new sounds and find new ways of using things. That's just back to the load of vintage gear. But it's also about taking these people who have these incredible skills and trying to get those skills out of their head and get them able to train and inspire others, which is why James, although he started off as a freelancer, is now coming to work for us. A couple of final pieces here. So Keep Calm and Rock On, that is, just to get his name correct, is John Leamseeder. He died about 3 weeks ago. That thing behind him is Tonto, which is a massive sort of synthesizer, which is his last restoration. I don't think it killed him, but that was his last restoration job. That can be found in Calgary. I don't know how many people he trained. What we're trying to do as a business is not just sell a piece of gear and pay our wages, but is to be able to have money to invest so that we can employ apprentices, and then we can employ James and not just pay him to be. All he did was fix one synthesizer for somebody, and then someone brought him another one. And now he can train people. Now he can work on things like trying to investigate these historically important pieces. That frog, I think one of the points I missed, it represents the interface between analog and, although they said it wasn't digital, actually it did have, part of it was digital. It was digital control of an analog set of effects, and it was, at the time, it really was cutting edge, even though they only made 100 and their company went bust. Yep, okay, those are very nice, and there's a frog.
Thanks very much indeed, Dominic. Completely different to everything else that has gone before. There's a strong element of curation to me in what you're doing. When we take a look at the photographs from your workshop, it resembles a museum to a greater extent. I think you probably think of that as an insult, maybe, which is...
No, I mean, interestingly, I went to Bradford Media Museum, which has started a collection of music equipment to go along with because it used to be the TV museum, but they've now started collecting stuff to do with recorded music in various forms and live music. And the curator, Annie, there invited me up because they are looking to make links with people like us. Yeah. And they can't, a lot of things, they buy them, they can't change them from the form in which they come into the museum. So if it arrives broken, they can't fix it, which means you have the concept of an incredible music instrument that makes no sound. Is it still a musical instrument? Right. Whereas what we are doing, what we are absolutely committed to, is about these things being used, preferably by, not by some collector in his bunker or by a sort of aging. Nothing against aging rockers, but but used by all sorts of different people, electronic artists, big people that you've heard of, people on the cutting edge, and that's why we're doing the project with the studio to make it much more accessible. So yes, it is curated, but it's curated on the basis of it actually having a use, rather than just being an exhibit.
Yes. Less passive, something much more active than that. Where I was going with the museum thing, I saw a fantastic presentation the other week about somebody that ran a museum saying museums change people's state of mind. They leave them more open. After you've had this moment of awe in a museum and seen something with this fantastic history, you then go and make different decisions for a few minutes afterwards. And it strikes me that you're doing that a little bit as well. That you said you make a different kind of music with these machines. And you maybe change the way musicians think, change the way anybody thinks about anything from coming into contact with this sort of thing. Is the value that intellectual or that creative?
Yes, I think I think that's why our social media sort of thing has sort of exploded, because for all the people that can't buy this, we're constantly posting demos, and we've built up 30,000 followers basically on the principle I was messing. And so we're engaging in the same process of discovery that other people who aren't, we're not necessarily experts on the thing, and we just got the thing, and we make some noises, maybe we make it do things it wasn't supposed to do. And so, yes, even without people getting their hands on it, you can then, they go, wow, okay, I didn't realize that could do that, and then that inspires them in different ways.
Yeah. And the story of the eBay business that got out of hand and resulted in you building a recording studio, it's a lovely story. I can't help being a little bit cynical, thinking, actually, you guys always wanted a recording studio and you were trying every business model.
Well, no, Tony, I mean, Tony had a studio. I mean, that was he was a DJ and he had a studio, and then he started selling stuff. When I came to work with him, the business had engulfed the studio, and so although it was still technically a studio, it was just full of cardboard boxes and stuff that was going to be sold. And so actually what the process has been is getting the studio back, being able to actually afford to get the bigger space. But then, once again, it's escalated, and now it's become, let's make the studio into some crazy online portal that we're now building for it. It
definitely transcends that, thank you. And the way you told the story was so evocative, and I don't know, there's a real sense of nostalgia coming off the screen and everybody kind of warms to those sorts of projects and wants to be part of them. The most transferable thing for me is in the image of the name, this crumbling edge. The idea that you've got this bleeding edge, as you put it, and then trailing behind something else that's sort of leaving obsolescence in its wake. And I wonder how that's probably transferable to an awful lot of things, and we should think about that more.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a reasonably, although I've not heard that term so much, it's quite well known in that, people put all their photos on DVDs, but they've got no way of reading the DVD, and the DVDs are degrading, and there's lots of it about. But it's something that we're constantly battling against. The people that work first hand with the equipment, and it's the same for old computer equipment, or as it is for music instruments, are retiring and shuffling off to the great workshop in the sky. So there's work to be done to try and get the knowledge and their experience. More than just the manuals, it's about the people and how they've used it and interacted with it.
Yeah. Dominic, thank you very much. Thank you.